5:30 a.m. sharp. He was always the first one through the gates. Plastic bucket in hand, worn duffel bag over his shoulder. Nobody talked to him. Nobody even knew his name. Until that day, when the young lieutenant spotted the tattoo on his arm. Because that tattoo was only earned by special men. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Because some heroes live in silence until someone finally notices. Fort Bragg's main headquarters building would wake up the same way every morning. The sound of boots on concrete, distant PT commands echoing across the base, and that familiar smell of military coffee brewing in the mess hall. But the most unnoticed, quietest detail was a ritual that repeated every single day. 5:30 a.m., right on time, a 68-year-old man named Michael Steele would walk through those doors, always wearing the same navy blue coveralls, worn work boots, carrying a plastic bucket and an old bag filled with cleaning supplies, rags, and a mop that had seen better days. The soldiers called him Mike and would politely nod as they passed. He never spoke, just a slight nod of acknowledgement in return. His first task was always the same, cleaning the corridors near the officer quarters. Slow, methodical, careful. He'd notice every corner, every speck of dust, never missing a detail. Young soldiers would sometimes joke around while ignoring him, or occasionally whisper among themselves, "That old Mike sure is quiet." Nobody questioned it. Nobody asked, because he was just the janitor. Michael Steele's daily routine worked like a perfect clock. 5:30 a.m. start, 5 p.m. finish. No breaks for complaints, no noise, no fuss. The soldiers had gotten used to him over the years. He'd been working at the same base for 3 years now. Nobody knew where he came from. Nobody asked if he had family. His HR file contained only basic information. Michael Steele, 68 years old, custodial staff, single. But certain details didn't escape observant eyes. Second Lieutenant Connor Matthews had noticed a few things. There was something about Mike's posture. His back was always straight. His walk was slow but determined. And most interesting of all, his morning glance at the flag. For a few seconds each day, he'd stop silently and look at the American flag, like a moment of reverence. Maybe he's an old veteran, Connor had thought, but he never dwelled on it much. Days passed like this. Mike quietly did his work while the young soldiers lived in their own worlds, until that weekend when something caught Lieutenant Connor's attention. Saturday morning there were only a few soldiers on duty at headquarters. Mike had come in as usual and started his work. Lieutenant Connor was there for weekend duty, arrived early, and was drinking coffee in the cafeteria while watching outside through the window. Suddenly, a car alarm started blaring. The sound from one of the vehicles in the base parking lot shattered the morning silence. The duty soldiers rushed to turn off the alarm, but the car's locking system was complex, electronic. 15 minutes passed. The alarm was still going. That's when Mike slowly walked over to the vehicle. He pulled a small tool from his bag, reached under the car, and just 30 seconds later, the alarm stopped. Everyone stared at him in amazement. "How did you do that?" asked the duty sergeant. Mike shrugged. "Used to work in a garage," he said briefly, picked up his bag, and walked away. But Lieutenant Connor had paid attention. That movement, that wasn't a garage mechanic's move. That was a maneuver requiring military technical knowledge. After that incident, Connor started observing Mike more carefully. Something was there. Something didn't add up, didn't quite fit. First he noticed his posture. Mike would never walk with his back to officers. He always showed respect, gave way, would stand at corners waiting for them to pass. This wasn't just habit. This was knowledge of military protocol. Second, he noticed his speech patterns. In the rare moments when he spoke, the words he used. Yes, sir. Permission. Security. These were military terms not used in civilian life. Third, he noticed his physical condition. Despite being 68, he never got out of breath, didn't struggle with heavy loads, could climb stairs as fast as young soldiers, and most importantly, that look. There was something in Mike's eyes. Not tiredness, not pain, experience. Like someone who had seen a lot, lived through a lot. Connor couldn't satisfy his curiosity anymore. Lieutenant Connor decided to research Mike, but he couldn't find detailed information in either the HR files or civilian records. It was as if this man had never existed. Only basic identity information. Michael Steele, born in Montana, 1956. Nothing else. Military records were also strangely incomplete. It just said, completed civilian service. He decided to investigate this further. He asked a few veteran officer friends, looked through internet archives, but couldn't find any trace. Until that day. Monday morning, Mike was cleaning the corridors as usual. Lieutenant Connor had also arrived early, trying to complete his paperwork. They were both on the second-floor corridor where the officer rooms were located. Mike was bent over cleaning stains on the floor, tensing his arm muscles. That's when it happened. The sleeve of his coveralls slid up slightly, and Connor saw something on his left arm. A tattoo. But this wasn't an ordinary tattoo. This was a military insignia, done in black ink, simple but meaningful. An eagle, and below the eagle, the letters SF. Connor's heart raced. SF Special Forces. Mike had noticed the tattoo was visible. He immediately tried to cover his arm, but it was too late. Connor had seen it. They faced each other. There was a long silence. For the first time, Mike's eyes showed not fear, but acceptance. "Lieutenant," he said in a low voice, "we need to talk." Mike led Connor to the old archive room where no one would be. He closed the door and sat quietly across from him. "What do you want to know?" he asked. Connor's curiosity was at its peak. "That tattoo. That's a Special Forces tattoo, isn't it?" Mike nodded. "Yes." "But your file shows you as civilian. Your military record also shows civilian service." "Because that's how it needs to be," Mike said. His voice was different now, harder, more determined. It was the voice of a military officer giving orders. "I joined Special Forces in 1974. Served for 25 years. Vietnam, Afghanistan border, Iraq operations. I was wherever I could go. But some of our missions don't go on record." Connor's mouth hung open. "I retired in 1999. But my official records were erased, because some operations I conducted are still classified. Nobody knows. And nobody should." Mike continued talking. His voice was no longer that of a storyteller, but of a war veteran. "In 1983, there was an operation on the Afghanistan border. 6-man special team. We stayed behind enemy lines for 48 hours. Our mission was to destroy radar systems. On the way back after completing the mission, my teammate got wounded." He paused. The weight of those old days was in his eyes. "They said we couldn't carry him. They ordered us to leave him behind. I disobeyed the order. I carried him on my back for 15 kilometers. I saved both myself and him." Connor held his breath, listening. That teammate now lives in Texas, has 2 children, 4 grandchildren, because of me. Then why do you work here? Why, as a janitor. Mike smiled, a real smile for the first time. Because my retirement pay is low, because I lost my family, and most importantly, because I still want to serve my country. As long as I'm here, I'm watching over this base's security. Nobody knows, but I protect this place every day. After that conversation, everything changed. Connor now looked at Mike with different eyes. This man wasn't just a janitor. This man was a legend. But Mike asked him for one thing. Don't tell anyone. Please. I want to live quietly. Connor promised. But something inside him wanted to do something, to honor this man. A few days later, there was a small problem on the base. The headquarters building's electrical system malfunctioned, and technicians couldn't solve the problem. All computers and communication systems were down. Mike quietly approached. If you permit, may I take a look? The technicians looked at him in amazement, but they had no other options. Mike opened the electrical panel. He worked among the complex wires for minutes, and he got the system running. How do you know these things? Asked the technician. I used to do this work too, Mike said and walked away. Connor couldn't stand it anymore. He couldn't share this man's story with anyone, but he wanted to give him his due. One day, the brigade commander called all officers to a meeting. Connor gathered his courage and told his commander about the situation. Of course, without revealing Mike's identity, he just said, "There's someone very special working on this base." The commander asked, "Who is this person?" Connor said, "With your permission, may I introduce him to you?" The next day, a small ceremony was organized. Mike was unaware of anything, doing his normal work. Connor called him to the commander's office. When he entered the room, the brigade commander was standing. Mike was surprised. "Commander, I'd like to introduce you to Michael Steele," Connor said. The commander gestured and approached Mike. "Do I know you?" he asked. Mike quietly shook his head. "No, sir. But I know you," the commander said, "because I found your file." The commander continued, "I spoke with old friends from Special Forces Command. I asked about someone named Michael Steele. Do you know what they said?" Mike listened silently. They said, "That man is a legend. If you find him, we'll do whatever we can." The commander pulled out a file from his desk. "Here's your real file. 25 years of service, 47 successful operations, saving 12 teammates' lives, 3 medals of honor." Mike's eyes welled up. "And most importantly," the commander said, "your loyalty to the country." The commander stood up and gave a military salute. "We owe you." Mike also stood up. For the first time in 3 years, he responded to the salute with his true identity. "It's an honor to serve, sir." From that day forward, everything changed. Mike was no longer just a janitor. He was appointed as an advisor to the base. He was teaching young soldiers from his experiences, giving advice on security matters. But most importantly, he was now seeing the respect he deserved. When walking around headquarters, soldiers would salute him with respect. Young officers would consult with him. One day Connor asked him, "Do you ever regret it?" Staying silent for so many years. Mike smiled. "No, because real heroes don't perform heroics to be respected. They perform heroics to be heroic." "So how do you feel now?" Now I'm at peace with both my past and my present, because I'm still serving my country, just in a different way. This story teaches us something important. Heroes are not always uniformed, decorated, famous people. Sometimes the greatest heroes live quietly, never speak, never boast. There are thousands of people like Mike around us. People who have done great things in the past, served their country, but now live ordinary lives. It's our duty to notice them, to show them respect, to recognize their value, to listen to their stories. Because sometimes the greatest lessons come from the quietest people. Have you ever encountered someone like this? Someone who seemed ordinary but actually had an extraordinary past? Share their stories with us in the comments. And if this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and watch our other content. Because as the human stories will continue to remind you of forgotten heroes. See you in the next story. And remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are the quietest ones.